I should have seen it coming. Looking back now, I can trace every single moment that led to that Saturday morning at Hargrove Market. The way Lily had been watching people differently for weeks, pressing her small nose against the living room window each evening to study the neighbors across the street eating dinner together. Always as a family, always with a mother at the head of the table. The way she had started asking me questions I didn't know how to answer. Not the easy ones, like why is the sky blue or why do dogs bark at the mail truck. The hard ones, the ones that arrived at 7 in the morning while I was standing at the stove burning toast, and she was sitting at the kitchen table with her feet swinging above the floor and her chin resting in both palms. Daddy, when someone loves you, do they stay forever? I had stood there with a spatula in my hand and tried to find the right words, the way I always did when Lily asked me something that had no clean answer. I told her that people love in different ways, that some love stays and some love has to leave, and that the leaving doesn't make the love any less real. She had nodded slowly, with the particular solemnity of a child who accepts an answer they haven't fully absorbed yet. But I could see it in the way she looked at her plate that she wasn't satisfied. Lily was never satisfied with incomplete answers. She was 5 years old, and she had already developed the habit of holding on to a question until it was ready to answer itself. So I should have known. I should have watched her more carefully that Saturday morning when she slipped her hand out of mine between the apple crates and the flower stall. When she moved through the crowd with that quiet, determined walk she'd inherited from her mother. When she stopped in front of a woman I had never seen before and tilted her head back and looked up the way she looked at things she'd already decided she liked. The woman had dark brown hair that fell in loose, unhurried waves past her shoulders, the kind of hair that moves when a person turns their head and catches the light differently every time. She was wearing a fitted white sundress with thin straps, the fabric following the soft curve of her waist before falling in a clean, simple line just above her knees. And she was holding a bunch of yellow sunflowers pressed against her chest with both hands, like she had already decided they were coming home with her. She wasn't looking at Lily yet. She was reading the small chalkboard price sign at the flower stall, tilted slightly to one side. Her lips pressed together in quiet concentration. Lily tapped her on the arm. The woman looked down, and my 5-year-old daughter, without hesitation, without a single second of doubt, looked this complete stranger directly in the eye and said, "Are you our new mom?" The market did not stop. People kept moving around them, kept reaching for peaches, kept handing over coins. But in that moment, I felt as though every sound went underwater. I was 6 steps away and frozen completely, a paper coffee cup in one hand, watching my daughter do the most devastating, most unbearable, most quietly honest thing she had ever done in her entire life. The woman blinked. Then she crouched down until she was at Lily's level, her sunflowers tilting sideways with her, and she looked at my daughter with an expression I didn't expect. Not alarm. Not the tight, polite smile people gave children when they didn't know how to respond. Something genuinely open, warm in a way that didn't perform itself. "Well," she said, "I haven't heard that question before." Lily considered this with full seriousness. "Do you want to be?" I started moving. "But let me take you back, because you need to understand who I was before that Saturday morning. Before Lily tapped a stranger on the arm at a flower stall and changed everything. You need to understand what kind of quiet had settled into my house, and what kind of man I had made myself into inside of it. My name is Evan Marsh. I'm 32 years old, and I live in Millhaven, Oregon, in a house with creaky floors and a porch that needs repainting and a vegetable garden that produces more tomatoes than one man and a 5-year-old can eat before they go soft. I work as a carpenter. I build things, cabinets, shelves, furniture frames, deck additions for houses around town. I work with my hands, and I've always preferred it that way. Because working with your hands means the problem in front of you is exactly as large as it looks. No more and no less. You can measure it. You can fix it. You can run your palm over the finished surface and know, without any doubt, that the work is done. My wife Claire died 2 years ago. We had been married for 4 years when it happened. A quiet Tuesday in March when the weather couldn't decide between rain and thin sunlight. Claire had been sick for a long time. Not in a dramatic or sudden way, but in the slow, grinding way that changes everything so gradually you almost don't notice. Until one morning, you look at the person across the breakfast table and realize the illness has taken more than you had calculated. She was 30 years old. She was patient and funny, and she made better coffee than anyone I have ever met before or since. She used to read to Lily in a voice that made every story sound like the most important story in the world. In her last clear week, she asked me to make sure Lily had a good life. She didn't say more than that, and I didn't ask her to explain it, because we both already knew what she meant, and the weight of it was more than we could carry out loud. I tried. I am still trying. I wake up every morning at 5:30, and I make sure Lily eats breakfast before school. I show up on time for every pickup. I read to her every night, even when my voice is flat with tiredness. I keep the house from becoming the kind of place where loneliness lives visibly. But there are limits to what one person can build alone. Even a carpenter learns that eventually, back at the market. By the time I reached Lily that Saturday morning, she had already asked the question, and the woman was already crouching down to her level. I came to a stop beside my daughter and put my hand on her shoulder in the helpless way parents touch their children when they are simultaneously mortified and proud. "I'm sorry," I said to the woman. "She does this." The woman stood and looked at me. Her eyes were a warm amber brown, the kind that catch light without trying. She was taller than I'd expected, close to eye level, which meant I had nowhere comfortable to look but directly at her. She was smiling, not politely. A real smile, the kind that gets into the corners of a person's face and stays there. "Does what?" She said. "Introduces herself," I said. "In unusual ways." She looked down at Lily, then back at me. She seemed very direct. I appreciated it. Lily was watching both of us with her head tilted 2 degrees to the left, which was what she did when she was processing something important. I had learned to notice that tilt. "I'm Evan," I said, because I had no better option. "And this is Lily, who I apologize for." "I don't want to be apologized for," Lily said. The woman laughed. A short, bright sound, the kind that moves through crowd noise like something solid. "I'm Hazel Reeves." And for the record, she crouched back down to Lily's level, her dark hair falling forward over her shoulder. "You don't need to be apologized for." That was a very brave thing to ask. Lily thought about this carefully. "Is the answer yes or no?" Hazel glanced up at me. Something moved through her expression, past the warmth and into something quieter, something she hadn't planned on. She looked back at Lily and said, very gently, "I think that's the kind of question that needs a little more time to answer." Lily accepted this with remarkable grace. "Okay," she said. "I'll wait." I bought the sunflowers, and without thinking about it, I paid for Hazel's as well. The moment I did it, I felt the heat move up the back of my neck. She started to object. I shook my head once, and she let it go. We stood at the edge of the flower stall, holding our respective bunches, while Lily pressed her face against the glass of a honey jar at the next table. "New to Millhaven?" I asked. I didn't know why I asked. It was a small town. I would have seen her before if she hadn't been new. "About 6 weeks," she said. "I'm a new reading specialist at Eastfield Elementary." She tucked a strand of dark hair behind her ear. The late September light hit the fabric of her dress at an angle that made the white look almost warm. "You? Millhaven born, I said. Can't seem to leave. She smiled. That doesn't sound bad. We talked for 11 minutes. I know because I checked my watch when Lily announced she was hungry and then counted back from the moment I had said my own name. In those 11 minutes, I learned that Hazel Reeves had moved from Portland, that she had no family in Millhaven but didn't seem troubled by that she found small talk exhausting but conversation worth having, and that she had very specific opinions about honey varieties that I found, to my own honest surprise, genuinely interesting. When Lily tugged on my jacket and said, "Daddy, my stomach is making sounds," Hazel and I parted the way strangers at a Saturday market do, easily, with no particular plan. I looked at the number saved in my phone that evening. I looked at it for a long time and did nothing. I didn't text her that week, or the week after. I went to work and picked Lily up from school and made dinners that were adequate and read bedtime stories I didn't fully absorb because a portion of my mind had gotten snagged on something I kept telling myself was nothing. Lily asked about Hazel twice. Once on Monday, once on Thursday. Both times I said, she was just someone nice we met at the market. And both times, Lily gave me the 2-degree head tilt that said she wasn't buying it. On a rainy Wednesday, 3 weeks after the market, Lily's kindergarten teacher sent home a reading list. At the bottom was a handwritten note. For supplementary materials, our school reading specialist maintains a small after-school collection in room 114. She had written a name at the ENDH Reeves. I told myself it was for Lily's sake when I walked her down the hallway to room 114. The following Friday, instead of straight to the packing lot, the classroom had low shelves crammed with picture books, a reading corner with a round blue rug and beanbag chairs, and a chalkboard on the back wall that said, "Choose a story." Choose an adventure in handwriting too large and warm to belong to anyone who didn't mean it. Hazel was at the back shelves with a stack of returns. She was wearing dark-fitted trousers and a cream blouse tucked neatly at the waist. And when she turned and saw us, her expression shifted just for half a second before she gathered it back into composure. "Oh," she said. "Hi," I said. Lily walked past both of us and sat down on the blue rug. Hazel looked at me. I looked at her. The room smelled like old paper and something faintly warm. "Lily's teacher sent home the reading list," I said. "Right," she said. "Of course." We both looked at Lily, who had already pulled 3 books from the nearest shelf and was sorting them by size with the efficiency of someone who had a system. "She's very self-directed," Hazel said. "That's one way to say it," I said. She smiled, and I could feel the 11 minutes at the market in the room with us. Neither of us said anything about them, but they were there all the same. Lily spent 45 minutes in room 114 that afternoon. She let Hazel read her 2 picture books. She asked 17 questions. She showed Hazel a loose tooth she'd been working on for 2 weeks. And when it was time to leave, she took Hazel's hand for just a moment, matter-of-factly, and said, "I'll come back next Friday." Hazel looked at me. "If that's all right," I said. "Fridays I'm usually here until 4:30. She said, so we came back the following Friday. And the one after. And the one after that. We fell into something neither of us named. Something that felt ordinary and also extraordinarily careful. The way you walk on ice that looks solid but has a matte quality that means you can't be fully certain. I let myself enjoy the Friday afternoons without analyzing them. I let myself like the way Hazel crouched at shelf level to help Lily find a spine. The way she spoke to my daughter as though her thoughts were worth full sentences. The way she occasionally caught me watching and didn't make anything of it. What I did not do was let myself want anything more than what was already there. I had Lily. I had the workshop. I had the house with the creaky floors. I had learned, in the 2 years since Claire, that wanting things that could be taken away was a kind of recklessness I couldn't afford anymore. Not with a daughter who was already asking strangers at flower stalls to be her mother. I was being careful, and then I saw Hazel at the Blue Cup Cafe on a Tuesday evening. And I stopped being careful without meaning to. Lily was at my sister Dana's house for the night. I had gone to the cafe to pick up a salted caramel tart I'd ordered for Dana's birthday, because I'd forgotten about it until 6 in the evening and the bakery was closed. I was at the counter when I saw Hazel through the front window at one of the outdoor tables. She was leaning forward with her elbows on the table. Wearing a fitted dark green dress that sat above the knee and followed the line of her figure without any effort. And she was laughing at something the man across from her had just said. He was tall and easy-looking, the kind of person who has never been uncomfortable in a chair. I paid for the tart. I didn't look through the window again. She texted me 2 days later. First time she had ever initiated contact. I almost didn't open it right away, which tells you more about where my head was than I'm proud of. When I did, it said, "Lily left her library card here last Friday. Wanted to let you know in case she needed it this week." I replied thank you and left it there. She wrote back, "Everything okay?" I stared at that for a long time. I almost said yes and let it end. But something about the directness of the question, the way Hazel always asked things without softening them into nothing, made me write back honestly. "I saw you at the Blue Cup Tuesday evening. With someone." Didn't want to interrupt. A pause. 3 minutes. Then, "That was my brother. He's visiting from Seattle. You should have come and said hello." I sat with that for an entire evening. The particular relief that arrived with those words was something I hadn't felt in a long time. The warm, embarrassed relief of being wrong about something in a way you're glad to be corrected on. I texted back an apology, and she sent a single response. "Next time. Just ask. Next time." As though she already knew there would be one. The following Saturday, she came to my workshop. I hadn't specifically invited her. Dana had mentioned she needed shelving for her spare room, and I had mentioned to Hazel in passing that I was building it that weekend. And Hazel had said she'd always been curious about woodworking. And none of that should have added up to her appearing at the workshop door at 10 in the morning with 2 coffees from the Blue Cup and her dark hair pulled back in a loose knot at the base of her neck. She was wearing a fitted charcoal Henley tucked into straight-leg jeans, and she had the look of someone who had dressed practically without knowing she had made it look effortless. She had never held a chisel before in her life, as it turned out. "You said you were curious," I said. "I am curious," she said. I didn't say I was skilled. She wasn't. She chiseled crooked and measured generously and read the wood grain wrong twice without embarrassment. But she moved through the work in a particular kind of quiet, not the silence of someone being careful around a stranger, but the silence of someone who genuinely didn't feel the need to fill empty space, which I hadn't expected and which turned out to matter more to me than almost anything else. Some people treat silence like a problem. They crowd it with words the second it appears. Hazel sat inside it like she'd been there before at some point in the early afternoon. She looked at the cabinet frame taking shape between us and said, "Do you ever make things just for yourself?" I set down the sandpaper. "What do you mean? Like, do you ever build something and then decide to keep it instead of delivering it?" I looked toward the shelf near the window. There was a wooden box there that I'd made in the first winter after Claire died. No purpose. Nothing to put in it. Just something to occupy my hands at 2 in the morning when sleep wouldn't come. I nodded at it. "What's in it?" She said, "Nothing," I said. "That's the point." She looked at that box for a long time without saying anything. The afternoon light sat on the side of her face while she looked at it. and I watched her look and I thought, very quietly, that I was in a significant amount of trouble. She left at 3 to meet her brother before his bus back to Seattle. I walked her to the workshop door, and we stood in the afternoon light with sawdust still in the air between us, and neither of us said anything for a moment. She had her jacket over one arm. I had my hands in my pockets. The moment had a weight I didn't know how to lift without dropping something. Next Friday? She said. Next Friday, I said. She gave me that quiet smile, the one that felt like it was just for me. It lasted 4 more days before Sandra Walsh knocked on my front door. Sandra was Claire's mother. She visited twice a year, usually in October, always with the particular energy of a woman managing grief by keeping close watch on everything it had left behind. She loved Lily with a fierce, specific love I had no right to question. She loved me with a more complicated kind of love, the love reserved for the man her daughter had chosen and then had to leave, which carries within it always the faint and unavoidable question of what happens next. She brought a casserole and sat at my kitchen table and watched Lily eat dinner. And then she set down her coffee mug and looked at me with carefully level eyes and said, "Who is Hazel Reeves?" Lily stopped eating. I set down my fork. "Someone from Lily's school. Lily mentioned her on the phone last week," Sandra said. "Said she was beautiful and smelled like books and was going to be her new mom." I looked at Lily. Lily studied her plate with tremendous focus. Sandra folded her hands on the table. "Evan, you're not obligated to stay alone forever. I want you to understand I know that. But Lily is 5. She's still learning the shape of what she has. I just need to know that whoever comes into this house understands that too." "Hazel is a school employee," I said. "She's a friend." Sandra looked at me the way people look at someone who has said something technically accurate. "Just be careful," she said, and I had been careful. I had been nothing but careful for 2 years. But careful had started to feel like another word for lonely. And I was tired enough of that particular synonym that I nearly said, so out loud, I was careful. Right up until the Thursday night in November when Lily woke at 11. With a fever of 103. I stood in the hallway outside her room with a thermometer in my hand and experienced the particular terror of single parenthood, which has nothing to do with not knowing what to do and everything to do with knowing that whatever happens next, you will face it alone. Dana was 3 hours away at a conference. My neighbor Tom was traveling. Sandra was 2 hours south, and Lily was crying, not dramatically, but in the quiet, continuous way that wears itself out, without stopping, and 2 hours felt like a distance I couldn't afford. I stood in that hallway for exactly 30 seconds. Then I called Hazel. It was 11:17 at night. I had no logical standing to call her. She answered on the second ring. "Evan? Lily has a fever," I said. "I'm sorry. I didn't know who else. What's the temperature?" 103. "Have you given her anything yet?" "Not yet. I'll be there in 15 minutes. She was there in 12. She came through the door in a dark sweatshirt and leggings with her hair loose and no makeup, and carrying a paper bag that held children's fever reducer, a cool cloth, and a small wrapped peppermint candy because, she explained, her mother had always believed peppermint made sickness feel less serious. She walked directly to Lily's room without being asked. I stood in the doorway and watched her sit on the edge of Lily's bed, touch my daughter's forehead with the back of her hand, and begin talking in a low, unheard voice about a book she had read this week. A fox who was afraid of winter, spinning the story slowly while Lily's breathing evened and deepened and finally settled into sleep. She stayed until 1 in the morning. When Lily finally slept properly, we came downstairs and I made chamomile tea without asking, and Hazel sat at my kitchen table. with her hands around the mug, and the house was completely still in the way it only gets after a scare passes. "Thank you," I said. She shook her head once. "You would have managed." "Probably," I said, "but I didn't want to." She looked at me. Not the way she looked at the cabinet frame or the wooden box or a picture book she was deciding whether to shelve. This was different. The kind of looking that means a person has decided to actually see you. "Can I ask you something?" She said, "Yes." What was she like? Claire? I hadn't expected that. Most people avoided it. Avoided her name, avoided the subject, the way you avoid pointing at something tender. People who had known us had learned not to say her name in my presence. People who hadn't were afraid of the question. But Hazel asked it the way she asked everything, directly, without armor, like the asking itself was a form of respect. I sat down across from her. I told her. Not all of it, but enough. I told her about how Claire made plans constantly and carried them in her head like a filing system, and how in her last months, when the illness had taken most of her energy, she would still lie in bed and describe the plans, not because they were going to happen, but because holding them in words was the last form of control she had. I told her about the Tuesday in March, about the particular angle of light on the hospital floor that I still haven't been able to forget, about coming home to a house where everything smelled exactly the same and nothing was. Hazel listened without filling a single silence. When I finished, she was quiet for a while. Then she said, "I was engaged 2 years ago. His name was Patrick. He left me for someone he'd known for 3 weeks. And when he told me he had the particular confidence of a person who has finally decided to tell the truth and is proud of himself for it." She looked down at her tea. "It wasn't the same as what you lost. I know that. But I stopped trusting the part of me that chose people after that. That's why you moved to Millhaven," I said. She smiled, a small, tired smile. I kept telling myself it was just for the job. We sat with that for a while. "You drove over here at 11:17 at night," I said. "For someone you've known 10 weeks. She looked at me. "Yes, that seems like trusting something," I said. She didn't answer right away. Outside, the wind moved through the maple in the front yard, steady and low. Then she said, quietly, almost to herself, "Lily asked me a question at the flower stall. I know. I answered it wrong," she said. I said it needed more time. But I already knew. I looked at her across the kitchen table in the 1 in the morning quiet of my house, and I understood that she wasn't entirely sure what she had just said or why, and that the saying of it had scared her more than she was willing to show. She left 20 minutes later. She hugged me at the door, briefly, the kind of hug that carries more information than the person giving it intends. Her hair smelled faintly like something clean and warm, something that stayed in the hallway after the door closed. She didn't come the next. Friday. She sent a text in the morning. Something came up. "I'll leave the books for Lily at the front office. I'm sorry." I read it 3 times. Texted back, "Okay, hope you're all right." Put the phone in my pocket and went to work and built things with my hands until it was time to pick Lily up from school. Lily asked where Hazel was. I told her Hazel had something to take care of. Lily accepted that. But at bedtime, in the dark, she said, "Daddy." "Yeah, Bug." "Do you like Hazel?" I sat with that for a moment in the dark. "I do," I said. "Like a lot?" "Like a lot," I said. She was quiet. "Then, did you tell her?" I hadn't. I had sat across from her at 1 in the morning while she said something brave and oblique, and I had held my own answer back because the part of me that had learned to hold things carefully had done what it always did. Stayed still. Calculated the risk. Waited. "Not yet," I said. Lily was quiet for a moment. Then she said, with all the authority of someone who's been patient long enough, "Daddy, you should hurry up." She was right. She usually was. I went to the school on a Thursday, not a Friday. Not the structured, established day that felt safe because it was organized. A Thursday, at 4 in the afternoon, without Lily, which meant I was just a man walking down an elementary school hallway with no practical reason to be there. The door to room 114 was open. Hazel was at the back shelves with a box of returns, sliding books into their spaces, and she was wearing a fitted burgundy cardigan over dark jeans. And she had her hair down, and she hadn't heard me yet. I stood in the doorway for a moment and thought about what Claire had asked me in that last clear week. A good life, she had said. She had wanted me to make sure Lily had a good life. But she hadn't said anything about what kind of life I was supposed to have. I had always assumed the instructions were the same for both of us. Keep moving. Keep the house standing. Don't want things that can be taken away. I wasn't sure anymore that was what she'd meant. I wasn't sure she had meant that at all. Evan, Hazel said when she turned and saw me. She said my name the way you say the name of something you've been thinking about. I should have said something, I told her. That night, she set the book in her hand down on the shelf. She didn't pretend not to know which night. I scared myself, she said. I know. Patrick didn't just leave me for someone else, she said. He left me while I thought we were fine. While I thought I knew exactly what I had. And ever since then, I've been terrified of being the person who's wrong about something again. About someone again. I crossed the room. Not quickly. One step, then the next, until I was standing close enough to see the particular amber warmth in her eyes that I had first noticed at a flower stall on a September morning. You're not wrong about this, I said. She looked at me for a long time. No, she said quietly. I don't think I am. I didn't kiss her in that classroom. We weren't in a film, and room 114 had paper clouds hanging from the ceiling and the alphabet running in a cheerful border along the walls. What I did was rest my hand against hers where it lay on the shelf, very gently, the way you press your palm to a surface to check if it's warm. She didn't move her hand. We stood like that for a moment, two people who had come the long way around to the same place, both of us a little breathless from the distance. Lily told me to hurry up, I said. She laughed. The full market laugh, the bright one that moves through the air like something solid. It filled that small room completely. I took her to dinner that evening at the little Italian place 3 blocks from the school that she'd mentioned once wanting to try. We sat by the window while the town moved past outside, and we talked about real things, not the carefully managed things we'd been talking around for months, but the actual architecture of each other's lives. She told me about her mother's garden in Portland. I told her about teaching Lily to ride a bike in July, how many times I'd run the full length of the street, holding the back of the seat before finally letting go. She laughed at that. I thought about wanting to make her laugh for a very long time and not feeling afraid of that thought for once. She came for dinner the following Sunday, and the Sunday after, and the one after that. She showed Lily how to fold paper into small birds, which Lily distributed to every horizontal surface in the house with the seriousness of someone completing an important mission. I fixed the wobbly leg on Hazel's dining table and hung a curtain rod she'd been unable to get level for 3 weeks. By December, the shape of our lives had shifted in the quiet way that permanent things shift, not all at once, not with ceremony, but with the slow accumulation of shared Sunday evenings and small repairs, and the sound of 2 voices in the kitchen where there had only ever been one, and then one. Sunday evening in late January, Lily was sitting at the kitchen table working on a drawing, and Hazel was beside her reading, and I was doing dishes with my back to the room. And I heard Lily say, in her most casual voice, "Hazel, Hazel said, not looking up, "Are you our new mom yet?" I stopped washing. The kitchen went quiet. I turned around. Hazel had closed her book. She was looking at Lily with that expression I had first seen at a flower stall in September. The one I hadn't known how to name then and had come to know completely since open. Warm, genuinely moved without performing it. She glanced up at me. Her eyes were bright. Then she looked back at Lily and said, very gently, I'm working on it. Lily considered this with the weight of someone deciding whether the answer is sufficient. Then she picked up her pencil and said, with the complete certainty of a 5-year-old who has known the answer for months, okay, I'll wait. I looked at Hazel. She looked at me, thought she was smiling. That quiet one. The one that was just for me. I thought about what Lily had done at the flower stall, how she had slipped her small hand out of mine and moved through the crowd with that determined walk. How she had stopped in front of a woman she had never seen and asked the most honest question she knew how to ask. I had spent years as a carpenter learning that the work worth doing is usually the work that looks hardest from the outside. That the most lasting things are never built quickly. That the wood grain running in 2 directions at once you understand it, produces the most beautiful surface. Lily had known something I hadn't let myself know. She had walked up to a stranger on a September morning with sunflowers all around her and said, "Are you our new mom?" And Hazel Reeves had crouched down at her level and said, "I think that's the kind of question that needs a little more time to answer." She had been right about that. But the time had passed. And the answer, as it turned out, had been yes. All along. There are mornings now when I wake before the light reaches the fields and I lie still and listen to the particular quiet of the house. And it is a different kind of quiet than the one I lived inside for 2 years alone. It is the quiet of a house holding its breath before the day begins, before Lily wakes and asks 17 questions before breakfast, before Hazel comes downstairs with her hair loose and her hands wrapped around a coffee mug. It is the quiet of a house waiting for everyone in it to wake up and fill it. And that, I have come to understand, is the best kind of quiet there is. I should have seen it coming, but I am glad I didn't. Some things are better when they find you exactly when you're not expecting them, slipping out of your hand in the middle of a Saturday market, moving with quiet certainty through the crowd toward something you hadn't known to look for. All Lily did was ask Dot, and it turned out that was enough.